Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. We're going to show some love to the rhythm section today with Noah Levy. He's a very successful session man and session player and drummer. Was in an independent band as a band member for years. We'll talk all about that. He's currently drummer for Brian Setzer. A couple of quick announcements. Number one, I want to thank our mutual friend, Kevin McKendry. He's one of the nicest guys I've met. Kevin, thanks for connecting us. And also make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe to subscribe to the audio and video of the show. If you're watching us already on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and the little emoji that looks like a bell. That helps us out with YouTube, and thank you for that. All right, quick on Noah. Toured and recorded with his brother Adam, not his legit brother, not his homie brother, in the Honeydogs. It was a really cool indie band. And I went through some of the songs there. Only indie bands come out with great names of records like Love and Cannibalism. Seriously. That's such a cool, like, you don't see that in like a pop band, it's just really cool. And very cool album covers that you guys had. It was like, really hip. And they worked together in the Honeydogs for 10 years. They released 11 albums on major labels. Since then, Noah's been touring and recording. He's been with Brian Setzer since 2009. He toured with Five for Fighting, Mason Jennings, and Tift Merritt. And he also toured and recorded with the BoDeans. Kenny Aronoff was in that band. I guess you took Kenny's place?
Yeah, I stepped in after him. That was some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I had him on here, man. He's like an energy vector, or he's got like the energy of the sun in him or something. He also toured with Peter Frampton, Matthew and Gunnar Nelson, and a really cool band called Golden Smog, which featured Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, Gary Loris and Mark Perlman from the Jayhawks, and Danny Murphy from Soul Asylum. And he owns a very cool studio, which is in right now, called Chubby Mammal. See, there go those cool names. Chubby Mammal. Where did you get that name from? That's such a cool name.
My daughter, when she was a little kid, we were sitting around the dinner table, and she said, "Daddy, are dolphins chubby mammals?"
That's classic. That's awesome, man. From the mouth of babes, right? That's cool.
Yes, indeed.
He owns Chubby Mammal Studios in St. Paul, Minnesota. We'll talk about that. Man, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on the show, Noah.
Glad to be here. My pleasure.
Hey, so tell me, how did you first get started in the music business, and like maybe what was your first break?
Well, my brother got me started as a little kid. My brother's 8 years older than me. And, I would go see his bands in clubs. He'd sneak me into the clubs. And I guess my first break was just sitting in with them. And then when I was about 13, I started to get hired to play for other people in clubs and stuff.
Wow. 13.
Yeah, I was, drummers are hard to find. And people were willing to, take a little, I could play. I was, my time was horrible, but I could play a lot and loud and, refined it later, but I could, quarterback a band still.
That's amazing, man. That's so young. Were you overwhelmed at that age doing that, or you like felt that in the right place for yourself?
Yeah, it just felt right. And it was what I grew up around with my older brother. So, I knew it was special. I knew it was exciting.
That's so cool.
So.
Wow. So like you're 13 years old and you're seeing all these like hot 18, 19-year-old girls walking around the clubs. That had to be like really encouraging for you to stick with it.
Yeah. Although they were out of reach for me. I was too young.
Yeah. That's really cool, man. And what was your first like break after, like professionally out of the clubs?
I was a band guy. I had my bands. I toured with a band called the Picadors when I was right out of high school. And then my brother and I started a band called the Honeydogs. And, I just lived in a van for 10 years.
Wow.
So there wasn't really any kind of break. I guess the only break I really had was the Golden Smog gig, because I was slugging it out in a van and they needed a drummer. I jumped ship to do that for a couple months, like I get to play rock star and then get back in and slug it out with my band. And that was like my first taste of sideman. Instead of just being a band guy, I went on just as a sideman to do that.
That was, you know, I had never heard of them, so I listened to some of their tracks. It's kind of like rock. It's like Americana, but it's rock. It was a really good band.
It was pretty raggedy ass. You know, we did that record in a couple days down at this residential studio, and you know, I was a big fan of all their bands. So for me, just to be a fly on the wall was really fun. And I was young. They were all a little older than me, and it was pretty exciting.
How old were you when you did that gig?
Oh, I don't know. I was like 22.
Wow, that is young, man. That speaks volumes about your competency and talent, and as a musician, and your responsibility at a young age. Yeah, man. You can't, you know, you still got to get to the gigs on time. They can't say, well, he's only 18, so let's cut him. You know, that doesn't work.
Well, if I told you how I got the gig.
Yeah. Tell me how.
Well, I actually, the only time this has ever happened to me, I overslept for another gig and got fired.
Oh my God.
And I ran into the bass player at a wedding that I could actually make it because because I was irresponsible.
Serendipity.
Yeah. The sound man ended up playing drums for my other gig.
So, wow. That's wild.
Bad, embarrassing.
No, man. You know, how did you and your brother wind up forming Honeydogs? And that was a long run and a pretty successful run. It appears anyway. What did you learn from that experience?
Oh man, I put my whole being into that. You know, my brother was the primary songwriter. But we gave up everything to do that. At first we booked ourselves. We were on the road hundreds of days a year, you know, 200 days a year in a van.
Wow.
And it was really exciting. And, because of that, I put my whole being into it. And when it wasn't successful, it turned into a very painful experience in the end for me, because I believed in the music, I believed in everything, but it was so all consuming that when we went to a major label, and for the first time it was like, well, we're small fish in a big pond here, and they weren't doing anything. So that was the first time in my life where we were told, like, you can't tour right now. We don't want you to do this or that because we're not going to put money into it, or instead of us being a self-contained unit. So it was painful. It was my first experience with rejection, you know. And it was a great learning experience, but it was hard at the end for me.
What happened? Because 11 albums, 10 years, that's on a major label. That's on the outside, it's a pretty successful run.
We only did 2 records on a major. Okay. One was on Mercury, and I left. So I left after like 5 or 6 records. When my son was born, I quit. And they went on with another drummer, this fantastic drummer, Peter Anderson. And but they play sporadically now. Now it's like a project. It's it's not a touring entity or anything.
What happened? Just there was not enough steam to keep going, or it was just more, you leveled out and you didn't really take off after a certain level?
Yeah. And, you know, we had a couple cities we did well, and we never really caught on except for those few cities. And we were just beating our heads against the wall. And once I had left, I've never been happier. And it was a great experience. And it was something that I listened to it, and I believe in the music. I believe in everything, but it was painful.
Yeah. So that gig ends. How did you, in your mind, tell yourself, I need to keep going doing this? Because it's a hard thing when you're like heartbroken in a sense.
Well, you know, I was lucky enough to, I got a gig with this guy, Mason Jennings, great singer-songwriter, and toured the country with him for a year. And that showed me that I really enjoy just showing up and playing drums. I'm doing it for music's sake. I don't care how many people are in the audience tonight. It can be a full house. It can be 10 people. But I'm just thinking about music. I don't want to think about my career. I want to play the drums, and I want to get better at it, and I want the band to sound good. So it was a very liberating time for me. And then after about a year, my son was born, and I quit touring for a year.
What'd you do?
Took gigs around town, went broke, but I was really grateful to have that year at home.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. So it's kind of cool when your kid's first born.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is, you said you becoming a sideman liberated you from like all the stuff that wasn't positive, the bookings and the not making money and figuring out if you're profitable and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of like rejuvenated you in a sense.
It really did. And I ever since then, I've been able to just put certain compartmentalize things. And if a touring gig is not going well, or a session is not going well, that's not my whole life. That's during that time. And I can move on. I can do what I want. And, I'm not in the most stable business in the world, but, and as time goes on, you can kind of weed out who you're dealing with. You can see drama coming from a mile away. And it's been very positive for me.
That's great. Yeah, that's good. It's interesting how that turned out. I'm going to just mention some of the artists you've worked with for each of them. If you could talk about how you got the gig and maybe a cool or interesting story about working with them. And if there's anything you learned from that experience. Let's start the BoDeans, man.
Well, that one, I played with Kurt, one of the singers, on his solo show. And I came in after Kenny Aronoff. So
is there a band that Kenny Aronoff has not been in?
I know he's like the Zelig, or the Forrest Gump of drums.
Yeah, especially for the Midwest stuff. It's like because he's a Midwestern dude. Everybody, I was shocked. I saw, Kenny. I was shocked, but I wasn't shocked. I was like, oh yeah, Kenny. Of course, he's in this band.
He's ubiquitous. He's
ubiquitous, man.
So I came in after him, and that guy, all I heard was louder, and I'm a pretty loud drummer, and so that gig, that was an interesting one because there were two frontmen, and I had to thread the needle between what each of them wanted. And I played with them for about 6 years. I had a nice time doing that.
Yeah, that's a good run. Yeah. Any funny stories?
Oh man. No real, that gig I learned, I had a horrible time starting in that band, I'll be honest, because they did this thing at the end of songs where he would call audibles and he'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, but he was ending on the 4 instead of the 1. So for a couple shows, and we didn't have a rehearsal to figure this out. And the endings were just train wrecking. And I'm like, what is going on here? I've been playing my whole life and I can't do, and what is going on? So finally I went down to a rehearsal down in Texas at Kurt's place, and no, we're supposed to be ending on the 1. He was counting into the wrong spot. And
so you weren't losing your mind.
Man, it was crazy. But funny stories with them. No, I can't really think of any off the top of my head, but
all good, man. It's funny. Long before I even had this show, you know, the movie Sidemen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was shortly after I started this show. I remember they're interviewing people about Kenny. And do you know Rob McNally?
I know who he is through Kevin.
Okay. So I remember they're interviewing Rob, and he said one thing, man, that guy is so fucking loud. That's what he said. This is exactly what you said. And that was it. And then they just cut to, you know, somebody else. Yeah.
Well, my buddy, Eric Holden, who was playing bass with the BoDeans at the time, he said he'd be playing and people in the front row go, "Can you move? I'm trying to watch Kenny."
Nice. Frampton. I know you did a tour with Peter Frampton. How did you get
Yep, I did the album Fingerprints with him. Great guitar player. Yep. He was, you know, the thing I'll say about Frampton is every night it was as though he worked out these motifs in his room all day because it was different. He would go into like these passages on these long songs that were very structured. It was wild.
That's cool.
So it was, you know, that was fun. Good band.
How did you get hooked up with him?
That my buddy Rob Arthur, who I got the 5 for Fighting gig for, turned around and got me that gig. He was his keyboard player.
Is that like rewarding? Not that you're looking for something back ever, but that's got to be pretty good. Like, hey man, that was really cool to get, you know, to get that swap like that.
Oh yeah, you know, it's I would attribute that more to you like that person enough to work with them in the first place.
Yeah.
And actually Rob always said, do they give good bus? Like, can I hang out with them, you know?
That is, I've never heard that, but I love that. Do you give good bus?
And you know, Rob is a great musician. And in fact, 5 for Fighting was looking for a piano player, and he showed up at a rehearsal or an audition and just nailed it. And I said, Rob, thanks so much for learning it. And he said, what was I going to do? Not learn it?
That's funny, man. Good story. And how did you hook up with Setzer? So
Setzer, I was at parent-teacher conferences.
Oh my God, this is
for
hilarious.
My son. And we're like, oh, you know, it's kindergarten or whatever, and let's go get some hamburgers afterwards. And I get a call, do you want to come record with Brian Setzer? And I'm like, yes. My first concert was the Stray Cats.
Wow.
So I was a huge fan. And so I go over to the studio in Minneapolis, and I come in, he's playing the Vibes with his pompadour up, and total gentleman. I liked him right away. And listen to the song, cut it, and he comes bursting in, where you been all my life? You know?
Oh man, that is cool.
And I liked him right away. So then we did like 2 songs that night, and then, hey, can you come back tomorrow? Can you come back tomorrow? So we ended up doing the whole record. It was just supposed to be demos, but ended up being the record.
That's great. How did you get that connection?
That was this producer in town. And he
awesome.
lives in town now. He lives in Minneapolis.
Oh, Setzer?
Yep. He's been here for about 10 years now.
Wow, it's so cold there. Why would someone? I mean, this sounds horrible. Why would someone move there? It's so freaking cold. I mean, I'm sure it's beautiful, but
you know what? He likes the people and just kind of the there's not much artifice in the people here, you know. And I'm sure, you know, he can get away from his career, and you know, when he wants his career, it's there, but it's not like a industry city.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense, because you get in LA, you can't say that. You know, you can't go to like South Beach or Miami. There's a little bit of bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit in those places, you know, where people have an agenda, and, you know, you never know. I could understand that and appreciate that, actually. People
are really down to earth here.
Yeah.
It's,
yeah, I could see that. And now you kind of have this, the because his music is kind of lifestyle. It's not really, you know, the outfits and everything. You kind of have that hairstyle now with the sideburns, and you got that good. Did you have that?
I had to cut my hair to do it. Luckily, I liked the way it looked.
Yeah. There's somebody else. There's some other bands like that. Man, I can't think off the top. I'm having a brain fart. Kind of like a motorcycle band, but sort of like that all those rockabilly guys. It's more like a lifestyle. It's like boat people. You know, you don't casually own a boat. It's like, you know, there's a lifestyle that goes with the, you know, the dockers and the specific shorts and shirts and, you know, kind of stuff. And it's fun.
Well, and I love that music, but and I listened to a lot of it, but I could never just limit myself to that. And I think that's why Brian likes Kevin and I and Mark Winchester, and because all these people that were making those records didn't just listen to rockabilly.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
And but yeah, the lifestyle thing, it's a trip, man.
Yeah.
It's this whole subculture.
Yeah, it's very cool. Any other gigs that you'd like to chat about that were cool and fun, or you've got like nostalgia or good memories from them?
You know, I really liked playing with Tift Merritt. I toured with her for a bit. She's a phenomenal singer. Yeah,
I looked her up along with the other Mason Jennings. That they're both really talented people. He's got a hell of a story too, man.
Yeah, he was. That was really interesting because it was a trio. It was acoustic guitar, bass, and drums, and trying to make that work every night was very interesting.
You mean with Mason?
Yep, and dynamically and to make it rock.
Yeah,
like he wanted it to rock sometimes too, and it was. I really enjoyed that challenge.
That's nice, man. Top 3 experiences you've had musically. Could be studio, live, doesn't matter. First things that come to mind.
Oh man. You know what's strange? It's hard for me to say because there's kind of smaller things. They weren't probably the first time I played First Avenue, which is the club in Minneapolis where they did Purple Rain.
Oh, that is really cool.
And that is, if you live here, if you grow up here, that's like your touchstone. That's even to this day when I play there, I can't eat that day, you know, like it's so that was a big moment. But you know, if I think about it, it's like, oh, I played this wedding with this country band once, and it was like one of the most amazing nights of music ever. Where everybody was just in the zone in this crazy way. And we were doing honky tonk, you know, Merle Haggard songs and Buck Owens stuff, but it was just memorable. Sometimes the big shows there's so much wrapped up in it that you can't even really enjoy it. You know, if it's just a moment goes by you. Every time we play the Ryman with Setzer, that's a big thrill.
Man, I totally get it. Because if you think in your personal life, like the times maybe when you brought your son home, not necessarily lots of pomp and circumstances with that, but, you know, or when after you, maybe not your wedding, but when you asked your wife to get married or something like, you know, so I totally get it. It's most of the time it's fanfare and emotion don't tend to go, you know, they don't always tend to be tracking relatively the same.
Yeah.
I totally
get it. And there's just so many small, over time they blend together, but this sounds corny, but it gets a little sweeter with time. You would think that it would diminish, but somehow hitting a stage right now or going into a studio with great musicians gets a little sweeter. I don't know how many more times I'm going to be on a stage, or, you know, who knows?
No, I get it. Well, especially as you get older, as you get older, not that you're like being morbid, like but you do value your time more.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you value people more. You value, and a good night, I don't know. It just means more. It means more to me now.
That's great. Not many, it's how cool is it that, you can say as you're getting older, things are more important. That's not, the things and things you like doing, for a living. That's awesome.
I think part of that too is choosing the right things.
Yeah.
Understanding that if I get in this situation, it's just not going to be enjoyable.
So you're pretty vigilant about that.
Yeah, I think especially a touring situation. I've been faced with, like, oh, that person's an asshole, or it's just a joy. And if I'm going to be away from my family, I better like the band and crew a lot.
So I don't want to dwell on this, but what do you do? How do you handle a situation where, like, you wake up and just somebody grates on you, like their mere their aura? Because I'm sure that statistically that has to happen a certain amount of times, just because the number of times you're doing something, you're going to hit those numbers. What is your respite? Where do you go mentally to, like?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've totally been there. The nice thing, having your own hotel room, man, those years of sharing hotel rooms, no matter how much you love these people, we ain't built for that.
Yeah.
And man, you want to kill people. We would get into fist fights sometimes.
Really?
My brother and I would. But
well, it's funny. I had a question. Is it difficult working with your brother for so long?
Yeah. But we play together now. In fact, I've been recording with him lately.
Okay.
And I adore him. He's one of my best friends in the world. But yeah, being in a band was hard because we argued about absolutely everything. Yeah. And we had to see both sides of the coin all the time. And it was exhausting. And, we had good results, but.
Yeah, I could see that, because it's hard. Once you have a relationship with someone, the dynamics of that, just because you're in another physical place or even in another situation, those dynamics still exist. It's kind of like, I haven't gone to high school reunions or anything like that, but I would imagine many situations, the guy or the girl who was the class clown or whatever, they may not be like that anymore, but put them in that environment and they're back to the class clown, because the relationship dynamics were set at that. Right.
You imprinted somehow on that.
Yeah. So you and your brother had that thing, and then wherever you were, you're not going to change that relationship.
Well, and that kind of goes back to what I was talking about. When I had my band, my whole being was in it. And after that, now, if something's going wrong in my touring situation or in my studio situation, it's not about me.
Yeah.
My job is to make things better, but not make it about me.
Yeah.
If I'm in there complaining about, I can't hear anything, or you're an asshole, or, things could completely derail. And I don't want that role. I want my role to be, I want to make you sound better. I want you to have a nice time while we're doing it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty easy spot to be in.
Yeah.
But, people get in their own way sometimes.
Well, you've had the benefit of 11 years in the van with your own band. So you have a great frame of reference, like, man, it could be worse. I could be responsible for fixing this.
Yeah.
Which you were for that period of time.
And I think that granted that there's no comparison, but when I tour with these artists, I have some sympathy for them being at the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine what it's like to be Peter Frampton or Brian Setzer, or when every question comes to you. even though you have management, you have all these people to kind of dissipate some of that. It's ultimately down to you. You're the one that hires everybody here. You're the one that, if you can't work, nobody works. Somebody, you can hire anybody. That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, totally is. It's like running a company is what I analogy to.
Mm-hmm.
You spent your whole career musically thriving on that St. Paul, Minneapolis music scene. Notwithstanding COVID, how is the scene there? Is it like, has it, so many places, the amount of clubs have just shrunk. What's it like there?
I'm trying to think. I don't think any of them have closed. Everybody's hanging by a thread. In fact, that club First Ave I was telling you about, the owner has started this bill called the Save Our Stages bill, and they're lobbying Congress to help the venues and the crews. I'm worried about crew members.
Yeah, every musician I talk with says that same thing.
I mean, I can record. I'm doing just fine here, but our crew members, it's very specialized work, and they've got houses, they've got families. It's scary.
It is scary, man. Well, hopefully, I just have a problem where the government says you can't work, and then they're like, good luck. It's not like they came in and said you can't work. So,
right.
I feel like they should be helping you. And so, I'm not saying give you 100% of your salary, but like my wife from England, she's got some family over there that were furloughed, and the guy was getting 80% of his salary. Now, I think 80% is probably a little too much, but like 65, 2/3 or 6, that's like a reasonable number. It's just, I feel, you can't work and good luck. That's not cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's a meteor struck. I mean, and I mean, people need help.
No, this is unprecedented for sure, man. Yeah. What was your childhood like growing up?
Man, I had a good childhood.
That's awesome.
Grew up in St. Paul, and 2 older brothers, and my oldest brother was the musician, and I'd say I had a pretty good childhood.
What kind of work did your folks do?
So my dad was a political science professor.
Oh, wow.
And my mom was, she worked for the first battered women's shelter in the country. She was the director of it.
That is so cool, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. When did that start?
Believe it or not, the 70s.
Wow.
So, you and I'm not supposed to say battered women, abused women shelter, but that was, so when she first started, it was just a phone bank,
like a hotline or something like that.
Yep, it was a hotline, and there was no place for these women to go. And then when they finally did get a house in St. Paul, my mom would have to go extract these women because the police would not get involved. They'd say, "Oh, we don't deal with domestics."
Holy crap, man, your mom is awesome.
Yeah, she was something.
Wow. That's really, talk about having an impact on people. I got goosebumps, man. That probably took a lot of balls to even set that up. And, because of the way everybody was so like, it was almost like, was it suffrage or something? Like it was almost like, well, that's not an issue we deal with, when it's like a pretty sick, it's a pretty critical. The 70s. Yeah, I know. That's not that long.
Not like it's the 40s or the 50s.
I know, man.
The 70s. Yeah.
Wow. Did you have pressure from your dad? A lot of times when I talk to musicians, when their family is academics, there's a lot of pressure to like, like poli-sci? Did he want you to become a lawyer or something like that?
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, my brother was summa cum laude from the U.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
but after he graduated, he said, "I don't know why I did it."
Oh, okay.
And
This is your older brother the
yeah, that
musician?
I play music with. Yeah, our
Oh,
middle
wow.
brother is Down syndrome,
Oh, wow.
and so I did not go to college, and I'm the first in my family not to go. So it was a
Right.
bit of a scandal. You know, my grandpa went to Harvard, and my dad was a professor, and you know, all of that. But I was not. I was touring right away.
Yeah. Well, plus I think the older, you have 2 kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have 3, and the way it is with us, it's almost like the third one, the youngest one or the younger ones get away with more because you're just, as a parent, you're so beaten down. Your tolerance level, us anyway, has just expanded. Like whatever, fine, just
Yep.
by the it's just you can only do so much, and so maybe you had some of that in your favor as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was why my mom let me play in clubs at 13. I was trustworthy too. I wasn't drinking yet. I wasn't, I was basically good.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. As you went through that period and access to drink and drugs became more available at a young age, how did you handle that?
I didn't really, I experimented just like everybody else,
Sure.
but it was never really a problem for me.
Wow, great.
I don't know why. I think that's just wiring though.
Yeah,
I mean, I drink. I'm not sober, but
sure.
But it never really became a problem for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's wiring as well. I had a buddy who's sober maybe 30 years, and he said something that was pretty he said genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was pretty spot on with that,
Yeah, I mean, my brother is sober, and my mom struggled a lot with substance, and
Interesting.
it's in my genes.
Yeah, well,
sure.
you're lucky because at a young, yes, it is a very much a genetic thing, and wow, fortunately for you, that's great, man.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, what were some of the low points or dark periods you have had to deal with, and how'd you get through them?
Like I said, I think my darkest period was when I was told that my band, when it was like, this isn't going to happen. And nothing we could do at the time was really going to make it happen. That's a hard pill to swallow. But man, what a great thing to learn. And I don't know. I don't feel like I can be knocked down by something like that again. And it didn't really knock me down then.
No, it put you in a different direction. It sounded like it really, like you said, liberated you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's funny though how things like that happen and you're devastated and you just don't, and then later you get to connect the dots and say, oh man, this is a good thing.
Yeah, and how do you deal with adversity? It's and the whole world's dealing with adversity right now.
Good God,
and it's amazing. It's amazing what everybody's doing right now. It's really something to behold. Even
shopping is what it seems like. Based on the stock market, everybody's spending money. Like, I don't know how. But.
I can't get my head around that. But it's you just never know until you're faced with adversity how you're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that was the darkest time, I would say.
Thanks, man. Any things you've done that were out of your comfort zone, but you did them anyway, and in 2020 hindsight, they were good, really good breaks for you, good decisions?
When Setzer called me to do the orchestra, that was daunting. It was, first of all, I'm not a reader. I mean, I can read very slowly, but I wasn't able to read those charts, you know. And they said, do you want to do this? And I'm like, okay. And I worked for months and months, and I memorized every hit, every setup. I learned how to play the vibes for the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies, you know.
Right.
And I remember at the end of that tour, like, I did it.
Yeah.
You know? And there were, at the beginning, there were some nights where I got inside my own head a little bit, and I overcame that. It felt like I was so happy about it. I was really proud.
So you're able to give yourself a pat on the back and acknowledge when you did something good, or when something good.
So.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think so. And, you know, you always got to be hard on yourself. Otherwise you wouldn't improve, you know?
Yeah, of course.
But, yeah, I was really happy that I overcame that fear and went for it. I mean, it's daunting, a 19-piece band, and figuring out how hard to push, when to lay back, volume, you know, it's pretty heavy gig.
It is. And you're driving that bus, man, as the drummer, period. That's it. You can't, I mean, that's your job, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Very
and
cool.
And you have to have like a pretty superhuman confidence to, you know, because and we all suffer from doubt, you know, but you just have to put it away when you're there.
What's it? Fake it until you make it kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any, if you had to go back and give yourself advice, you know, to young Noah, assuming you would have listened, is there any advice you would have given yourself that would have made your life easier, personally, professionally, any area you want?
Build a studio.
You would have put your studio together earlier.
A lot earlier.
Why is that?
Well, first of all, I love the work. I love dealing in it, but it was something that I had a lot of fear about doing because I'm not a technical person. I'm not, it's a viable source of income.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be crass about it, but it was, and I could have been doing this all along. As luck would have it, I bought a house a couple years ago with the structure that I could do this. But I would have forced the issue earlier had I known.
Yeah. I don't think that's crass if you're not thinking about making money, especially as a musician, if you're not thinking about it. I mean, unless you're one of the, you know, 0.1% of those musicians that are in those kinds of bands, or you have this whole, you know, you already sold 12 million albums or 20 million albums before the music business changed. You got to be thinking about that. I mean, you'd be, especially if you have a family to support, you'd be ignorant not to.
Yeah.
And I wish, to be honest with you, as a business guy, I wish more musicians would think about that, because it's just not a natural thing for a lot of musicians to think about that, but it's very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I'm just, every day I come out here and I think, oh, I love this.
Yeah.
Why didn't I do this earlier? But who knows? Maybe it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
But I had so much fear. I've spent years of my life in studios and I didn't pay attention.
Right.
With I paid attention to all the music, but I did not pay attention to the technical aspects. And I was with amazing engineers and producers, you know, a lot of Yodas have, you know, been in my life over the years. And I'm having to learn it all very quickly. And it's been fun and I've been enjoying it, but I'm just like, why did I not pay attention to where that microphone was? What, you know, where was the compression set on this? You know.
Well, you're learning it now, man. That's great. That's real good. Musically, is there anything you haven't done yet that you'd like to, or anybody that you haven't played with yet that you'd like to?
Oh man, there's a whole galaxy of people I'd love to play with, you know. There's the list is so long. You know.
Let's put a couple out there, man, to the universe. You never know.
Oh, I would love an R&B gig,
Yeah.
Something like a D'Angelo gig, or, of course, he's got, I love playing R&B. I don't get to do that often enough. I would love something like a Ry Cooder, or, like there's a million.
Pretty diverse. That's great. But R&B, Ry Cooder, that's nothing to do with one another. That's really exciting.
But there's, there's record collection, right? Like we've all got kind of diverse record collections, and
totally.
Well,
favorite musicians you've enjoyed playing with?
Boy, there's a million in town here. That too many to name, but I love playing with Setzer. I really, and I'm not saying that because he's my boss. He is such a force every night, and he plays with joy.
Yeah.
And I've found too, with age, there's some people play angry, and some people that play with joy, and a surprising amount of people play angry. And
I don't know how, man. You got to have a lot of steam as you get older to retain that.
Yeah,
it's a energy you could put elsewhere, man.
Yeah, I agree. But sometimes you get on stage like, wow, this is not enjoyable. And that's how they think they get from point A to point B. Or there's it's like some kind of reptilian part of their brain that's like, I'm angry when I'm putting it out there. And it's just, I don't love it. Yeah. And Brian comes, when he looks at you, it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, what are you doing?
So his attitude is more like, I'm getting to do this. This is so cool. Join me. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. There's lately I've been enjoying playing with people that will change the show up from night to night. People you have to watch. There's a guy in town here, this guy Eric Koskinen, who's a phenomenal musician. And he will just, you have to follow him around the stage in a beautiful way.
What's the first album you ever bought? Do you remember?
Billy Joel, Glass Houses.
Wow. I remember that record.
Yeah.
Tell me your top 3 Desert Island discs. No particular order, and just for this minute.
Probably Sticky Fingers by the Stones.
Yeah, great record.
Prince, Sign of the Times. Joni Mitchell, Blue, maybe.
Sticky Fingers comes up quite a bit.
Oh,
great record, man.
Yeah, I mean that whole period, it's hard for me to choose, but that one,
the Mick Taylor era, it was like nothing else. I agree with you, man.
Yeah.
And you know what? Unfortunately, I have chased down a lot of his like his solo stuff. It was never like what that unit had together. I mean, he was just to me, untouchable as a guitarist, as a blues as a blues developer of licks and I mean, tone, everything was just so awesome. Yeah.
Love him. And Jimmy Miller, the producer, when you hear Keith talk about those records, like Jimmy Miller, it was rhythm. It was all about the groove.
Yeah.
And they always had the songs.
Yeah.
But that one, there was just like this sexy groove.
Yeah. Tell me 2 or 3 things you've done or 2 or 3 changes you've made that have had the biggest impact on you. Could be personally, professionally, spiritually, anything that was important to you at the time.
I would say having kids was a massive change in what I was willing to do as a touring musician. And I guess even as a local musician, or I needed more.
Yeah, sure.
And I also, that gave me, I wasn't afraid to ask for what I felt like I deserved after that. And maybe I was hiding behind the fact that I had kids, but
it helped you increase your worth out of necessity, but it was probably something you should have done anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great benefit. It costs enough. It should give you a benefit like that, right?
No doubt. But right now, I mean, I'm going through a massive change. The whole world is, but this studio was finished in the week that quarantine went down. The electrical went in.
Wow.
So I'm in the middle of a pretty huge lifestyle change. I'll still tour, I'll still do all that stuff, but I just walk out my backyard and work every day, and that's new to me. And it's been an enormous shift.
That's great. That's cool. Best decision you ever made?
That's easy. That's marrying my wife.
How long have you been together, man?
Ooh, I was young, 96.
Yeah, that's 26 years or 24 years.
Wow. Yeah, 20. Wow. Yeah, we've been together for a long time.
Dude, I'm coming up on 28 in January, and I'm like, I cannot believe that.
Yeah.
I cannot believe I haven't screwed it up, first of all. But I mean, that's...
How does it happen?
Man.
We folded time.
I know. Isn't that wild? Most important things you've learned about yourself?
I've learned that I can weather a lot. It's been through a lot in the last few years, and I think I can weather a lot.
That's some version of that is the most common response to that. And I often wonder, is that a function of age? Because most of the people on my show are baby boomers.
Mm-hmm.
Or is that a function of the business or a function of both? I
guess if you've been around this business long enough. Okay, so for instance, COVID. Yeah. Everybody's just thrown for a loop. Most musicians are like, well,
yeah.
It's kind of how we lived. You deal with a lot of uncertainty. I mean, nobody was ready for anything this cataclysmic, but yeah, I think that's a function of that. And I think age and, yeah,
nobody gets out of here unscathed, man. You live 50, you've had some shit come down on you, man, for sure.
Yeah.
What do you like most about yourself?
I guess I think I make people feel good. I think I like interacting with people, and that sounds arrogant, doesn't it? But I think
you like interacting with people? That doesn't sound
or that I make people feel good. I think that's just my...
No, but that's what you like about you. That's the joy you get. No, that doesn't sound arrogant to me. No, not at all. No. It's funny. I read something the other day. There's a lot of people, and I have to say, I've had a handful of them on the show say, I'm an empath. I don't know what that is. Like, I've never looked at it. I kind of contextually noted, but it said something like, how could people be an empath, but they don't know how annoying they're being to you as they're telling you about that they're an empath? And I was like, fuck, that is very accurate, man. I was like, man, that is spot. My son sent it to me in like a meme for Facebook or something. It was really funny. Isn't that true? Like, oh, I'm an empath. And they start, and you're like, man, this is like, this is all.
Well, and that's kind of what I mean by, that's why it sounds weird that coming out of my mouth, because, you know, it should just be natural. It shouldn't be anything you ever have to verbalize, right?
Yeah. No, that didn't sound arrogant. I like making people feel good, basically. You know, I think that's the strength of mine. No, that's good, man. If everybody said that, the world would be a lot less, yeah. Best childhood memory.
Oh man, probably my brother taking me to a concert. He snuck me into this club, and I was 10. And
oh my God!
Do not let him go behind that door, because that's where the strippers are. Somebody, and so I was sitting at the side of the stage and watched his band. I was galvanized. You know,
that's awesome. Very cool. Happiest moment or happiest time in your life?
Boy, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but you know, my son being born and meeting my daughter.
Meeting your daughter? What do you mean?
My daughter's adopted.
Oh man, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
You know what? Can you talk about that for a minute?
Sure, sure.
What is that like, that when you do meet her? Because that's not, I think that's one of those things that it's like being pregnant. You can't know what that's like unless you've experienced it. But that sounds like a totally new, different experience. What is that like?
My wife and I were just talking about, well, my daughter's Ethiopian. So we flew all the way, my 3-year-old son, my wife and I flew all the way to Addis Ababa. And we get to the airport and like, well, do you want to meet your daughter? And we're like, yeah. And you walk in and there's this girl, she's asleep in a crib. She opens her eyes, like her eyes get really wide. And like, it was a combination. Well, first of all, it was meeting your child for the first time. It was the same thing as my son being born. It was just utterly surreal. But this instant familiarity, it was shocking. And my friend, who is also an adoptive parent, said, when you have an adopted child, you really believe in destiny. It's one thing to have a biological child. You know that's going to happen. But this girl from halfway around the world, somehow we found each other. You know, it's miraculous. Yeah,
that is cool. That is yeah. I could see that. What's the a lot of events had to have taken place for that to happen.
Yeah. And I think in some bizarre cosmic way, she willed it. She willed the whole thing. She's a very willful kid.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you for sharing that. And congratulations. That's a very nice thing. Most important thing your dad taught you and your mom?
You know, my dad, he just had a strong moral compass. I always felt like I really appreciated, I felt like he walked the walk.
Yeah.
If he thought something was an injustice, he would do something about it. And my mom was just this beautiful, she had a rough childhood and she gave us everything she didn't have. You know, like just unconditional love and never judged us, you know, just kind of beautiful.
I can't believe what she did for a living. I think that's like, you know, what a testament to her character to want to do that, you know?
Yeah. Well, and she had she was very complex. Like she had some mental health and, like I said, alcoholism, and she held it together to do that job. But then later on in life, once the kids were out of the house, she kind of fell apart a little bit. I mean, and you know, she had a good end of life. She kind of got it back together, but she spent some years in the wilderness after caring for other people was when she had to just care for herself.
You know what, man? I totally understand that. When you've had I had a very rough childhood, and I have had to put so much effort, so much of my time into constantly averting that, because it becomes your default setting in so many things you do. And who doesn't operate under a default? But, you know, when you know your default setting is not right for you, you have to be pretty vigilant about, you have to have a tremendous awareness, for me anyway, to fix, to not go to default mode.
Sure.
And sure, it gets not easier, but it gets, having that awareness is not foreign. Over time, you constantly have that, but it's always, you know, and I would bet that probably had to do with some reason, and you don't have to get into this, why she did that for a living.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that was, and yeah, it's, you know, we all fight our defaults. I do too. You know, my dad had a horrible temper, and I have to fight that every day, you know.
Yeah.
Like that. Because that's my default too.
Yeah. Good. No, mine did as well. And I was always like, so proud is not the right word, but happy that I never unloaded on my kids the way he did on me, because I knew, I didn't know what to do, but I knew what not to do in a sense, you know, and I always kept that together as far as that, you know, I felt like I probably yelled too much, but like in relative to how I grew up, I was okay. I forgave myself for that, because I didn't, you know, that was doing a good job for me, you know.
When your kids know that, your kids sense that. And
yeah,
that was the sense I had about my mom too. Was she would talk about it, but yeah, it's, your kids know that.
Well, it's interesting you say that. My kids now, they're 30, 28, and 20, and my two oldest, they never knew any of that was going on in my head, because we talk about that and their perception of how that. And so I felt so good when now that they're older, they could articulate some of that, you know, or just the conversations go, and it feels really good. I'm like, fuck, thank you. You know, yeah, I mean, it's a big gratitude there, man, you know? So, I totally get all that. You have any hobbies outside of music?
Man, I don't. It's sad. I don't.
No, most musicians don't.
You know, I love going for walks. I really love to travel. You know, travel a lot.
What's the favorite place you traveled?
Oh, well, my favorite place, I guess I haven't traveled there on vacation, but I love Japan.
So many people. What do you love about it? So many musicians love that.
You know what I love about it? Well, first of all, it's just so alien, everything about it. But the thing I love about being there is everything is in the act. And people are so considerate. If you're going to drive a taxi, you're going to have the cleanest taxi. If you are making a cola, you've sourced it from this place and that place. Or you go into a bar, like my friends know I like old soul music, so they brought me to this little bar. I walk in, they're playing Donny Hathaway live.
Wow.
You know, and they know so much about music, and everything is so specific. But okay, here's a prime example. You go into a hotel room in Tokyo, you know, the curtains always have that spot where you can see the light through it.
Yeah, and you have to dick around trying to, yeah.
Yep. In Japan, the track goes like this behind it.
Oh, little subtle things like, why wouldn't we do that?
But it's just all about just thoughtfulness. And everybody's living so close together that everybody's just so considerate.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful culture. And I've made some good friendships there. And it's mind blowing. It's a really mind blowing trip.
There's so many things like like Japanese culture, like in Sweden and places like that. I wonder that are really beneficial to society. I wonder why we don't adapt some of that stuff. Like basically you're talking about everybody takes personal pride in what they do is what I'm hearing you say. And that's a bar that's set when you're come out, you know, it's an expectation. And, I went to school with loads of Asian kids, and I think in Asian culture in general, that tends to be expectations are higher than Americans, you know? Why wouldn't we have stuff like that? It's kind of weird.
You know, it seems like common sense. I mean, it's and it's really beautiful, and the fact that we're even welcome there. I mean, we play Hiroshima when we're there, and and people are very welcoming, and
that's got to be weird.
History, pretty recent history.
Do you are you a reader? Do you ever read Haruki Murakami? Right. Well, how cool is that? But how cool is that? In all his books, he has a jazz bar. He used to own a jazz bar. That's why he does that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he used to own a small bar and it's so cool when he talks about, I go into the bar, you know, and they fetch me a boiled egg. It's always a boiled egg and spaghetti. You know, he's got certain, things, but he always talks about a jazz club, and he talks about specifically the records they're playing. And it's always like, you know, from the bop or slightly post-bop era.
I'll tell you, man, the thing I love about it too is these bars, it's like, it's smaller than this room. You can fit maybe 10 people in there. And it's like going into somebody's living room with their record collection.
Wow.
So you're hanging out and they're like, check this out. And, you know, it's like when you're geeking out with your friends, like, oh, listen to this chorus, you know, like there's this place in Fukuoka, it's a R&B club, and they're showing James Brown videos. You're watching the Tammy show while you're drinking.
So cool.
And there's this real sense of you're going to meet everybody in that place before the end of the night.
Wow.
And I love
talk
that.
English there?
Some people do, some people don't. It's very hard to get around. You can't read signs there.
Because it's all in Japanese. Yeah, that's got to be tough if you don't read Japanese. Yeah.
But but you can even, you know, you'll have a drink with somebody and sign things out, but you still, by virtue of being in this room together, I don't know, it feels like you have a bit of a bond at the end of the night. Maybe that's cool. Alcohol.
Could be alcohol. No, but I get it, because when you're in a smaller place like that you're inclined, especially, I'm sure that it's set up like probably someone's living room, not too different than that. No, I could see that happening. Well, plus some of it is the travel thing. Cause like, I notice with myself when I'm away, even if I go to Orlando for the night, when I don't have the responsibility of my life, man, I'm much more inclined to like lay back and just talk to anybody. And especially if I'm in another country, it's just like, you know, you want to like, hey, give me some of what you got. I need to learn, or I want to experience this, you know? So I know myself, I'm much more open to that. That's great, man. Two more questions. Funniest thing that's happened to you on stage or in the studio?
Well, I was once playing a show and I leaned over to grab a tambourine at the end of a song, like to kind of shake it, and I lost my balance and fell through the curtain.
Oh my God.
I ended up in the curtain fell down around me, so I couldn't get out of the curtain. It was like the whole so but I was laughing so hard I was choking. Everybody was just laughing, but that was pretty embarrassing.
Where was this? How old were you when that happened?
I was probably like 19 or 20. I was playing in Wisconsin somewhere.
That's funny, man. And last question, biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been intentional and how much of that has just been a part of aging?
I like to think I'm learning how to roll with things a little more. And I think it's both. I think it's both intentional and aging. Thing I like about aging is you understand patterns. It's things make sense. You've seen it, and you know what's important and what's not, or relatively.
Sure.
It's a constant struggle, but it gets easier, and I like that.
Right on, man. Hey, first of all, I want to thank you for really nice conversation, for being so cool, and for sharing. And
Thanks for having me.
oh man, it's my pleasure. And also, I want to tell people how to get a hold of you. It's Noah Levy, Levy, and you could find him on Instagram and Facebook. Also, Chubby Mammal Studio. If you're interested in, he's pretty busy there doing tracks. If you are interested in working with Noah and having him play on your music, message him on Facebook or Instagram. If you want to see some of his work, best thing to do is go to YouTube and look at like anything that Brian Setzer's done for the last 6 years. And you can talk with Noah. Just when you message him, just maybe give him some links, and so he could figure out a response to your answer and to your question rather, and see if it's a fit for you guys. Is there anything else I can promote for you?
No, that's about it. That's good.
Nothing. Chubby Mammal Studio. I love that name. I don't know if I like that better or Love and Cannibalism. That's such a good. I mean, like I've never been a big indie guy, but like I don't know, like when indie rock started, I remember going down to Tower Records, and I just like wanted to get into it a little bit, and all those records had cool names. I just remember leafing through them. So, listen, man, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you down here in Florida. I know you guys play Ruth Eckerd.
Yeah, well, next time we play Ruth Eckerd, come down.
Oh, yeah, man. Definitely. Love to see you guys. Now I've had like 2 of the band members on, I think, right?
Yeah.
Kevin, that'd be great,
My
man.
man, Kevin.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Noah, thanks for everything. Hang on one second. Let me wrap this up. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. Thanks very much to Noah Levy. Again, if you're interested in working with Noah on drum tracks or working with him in Chubby Mammal Studio, if you're local, hit him up on social media. On Instagram, it's Noah Levy, and on Facebook as well. And you see the smiling drummer, you'll know it's him. And most important, man, remember that happiness really is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar or your drums, and have fun. Until next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Thank you so much, brother.